American Sports Cavalcade. A panorama of speed, color, drama, and excitement. The American Sports Cavalcade.
Welcome to the land of the falling waters. This is beautiful Montreux Falls in the town of Montreux Falls, New York. Just one of the many spectacular waterfalls in this paradise of upstate New York known as the Finger Lakes region. And here is Lake Seneca, the longest Finger Lake, which is situated next to one of the most historic racing facilities in the United States, Watkins Glen. At 3.37 miles with 11 turns, Watkins Glen provides a picturesque setting for today's GTP endurance race from the International Motorsports Association. Hi, I'm Ed Bruce. And once again, we're at Watkins Glen to watch the GTP cars attack this hilly and demanding road course. You may recall in last year's race, we watched the team of Derek Bell, Jim Adams, and Al Holbert outclass the competition in their Porsche 962. Well, all the other teams have had a year to make adjustments. Today's action should prove to be a classic battle of driver versus driver and race teams versus Watkins Glen. As always, to call today's racing action, my partners Brock Yates and Steve Evans are standing by at Watkins Glen for the start of the GTP race. And while they're doing that, I'll be here in Costa Mesa, California, at the Briggs Cunningham Museum. We'll be taking a look at some classic old race cars. But right now, let's go back to Watkins Glen at the track with Brock and Steve.
Thanks, Ed, and welcome to Watkins Glen International in upstate New York, the birthplace of modern American road racing. Today, it's the New York 500 for IMSA-type Grand Touring prototypes. And on the pole, this beautiful red Porsche 962 driven by the German star Hans Stuck to a record-shattering lap here, over almost 125 miles an hour. Now, these cars are among the greatest in all-time prototype racing. This 962 with a 3.14-liter flat-six turbocharged engine, among the most reliable of all the big league cars. A whole field of these Porsche 962s here, but believe me, they're not the only guys here to contest for this victory. We've got some very interesting automobiles. Steve, how about that?
Well, Brock, as you know, Porsche never really rests in peace because always looking in the background to challenge their superiority are the March automobiles, designed and built by Robin Herd in England. Now, these are really the customer cars. You buy them and power them any way you want. In fact, last year, you'll recall, Randy Lanier used a Chevy V8 to win the IMSA title. Now, here this year at Watkins Glen, there's a bevy of Marches. This is the number 45 car powered by a Buick V6. We've also got Marches here with Porsche engines and Chevrolet V8s. The most distinctive feature when you look at these cars coming around the racetrack is that big shovel nose. Brock?
Well, Steve, a lot of people think the Jaguars are the most beautiful racing cars in major leagues today. And this automobile, the 04 car of Brian Redmond and Hurley Haywood, carries the only normally aspirated engine in the competition today, at least among the front runners. This is a 6-liter V12, a beautifully prepared car from the Bob Tullius stables in Virginia. And, of course, backing him up will be Chip Robinson and car owner Bob Tullius and the number 44. So a pair of beautiful, beautiful Jaguar cars ready to go here today. Steve?
Well, Brock, I think everyone agrees. The most sophisticated race car out here is the new Ford Probe. Now, there's no way to even calculate how much money and man-hours have gone into this car on the part of Ford Special Vehicle Operations, Ford Aerospace, Zaxpeed of Germany. It's powered by the 2.1-liter turbocharged Ford 4-cylinder motor with a very exotic 16-valve head. Now, most importantly is its aerodynamics. It is the most slippery car here. In fact, the only thing that really interrupts the airflow are the rear-view mirrors for the driver, and they're trying to rectify that. So all in all, the Ford Probe only has one problem. It needs to borrow some of the Porsche reliability. Brock?
Well, Steve, this is the new boy on the block, the Rick Hendricks Corvette-powered Lola from Charlotte, North Carolina, driven by David Hobbs and Australian Vern Chupan. A real newcomer, a car that has turned the quickest time ever up the straightaway here at Watkins Glen, 201 miles an hour. It's a twin turbocharged production block Chevrolet V6 powering this car, and believe me, it's a sleeper in the field. Going to be a major contender as they get the bugs worked out of it. But you know what? Among all of them, the Jaguars, the Corvettes, the Fords, the Porsches, you name it, they still have one major challenge, and that is facing this historic old race circuit here at Watkins Glen.
Well, Brock, the men that designed this circuit weren't about to let anybody off easy. It is so challenging that for over 20 years, it was the home of the United States Grand Prix Formula One race. There are changes in elevation, lefts, rights, downhill turns, off-camber, blind hills, anything you can want on a road circuit, you'll find here. And we'll take a close-up look at the Huffaker Racing Pontiac Fiero, driven by this man, Bob Earl, from Northern California. Bob and team owner Joe Huffaker were kind enough to take our camera and you along for a ride. 3.37 miles, 11 turns of beautiful asphalt here in upstate New York. Our ride in the Fiero will start on the pit straightaway where the start-finish line is located. It leads down into this sweeping right-hander. Numerically, this is turn number 1 and a place where you'll see a lot of passing here at Watkins Glen.
Just past start-finish line at Watkins Glen, you have a second-gear downhill right-hand corner that leads on to one of the fastest parts of the circuit. On the way into this corner, you want to try to get a nice late apex, get on the throttle real hard to get set up for the 3 S's that lead on to the back straightaway, and try to have a late apex on each one of these because the exit of turn 4 is rather bumpy and it leads on to the fastest part of the circuit.
And also, the exit of turn 4 signals a long uphill section, Brock, that takes a lot of horsepower.
It sure does, Steve. One of the longest uphill straightaways in American road racing. This is the big horsepower part of this racetrack. As we said earlier, the Corvette of David Hobbs, 201 miles an hour. Imagine if he'd been on the level. Notice that the racetrack is bordered all the way around with that distinctive sky blue steel guardrail. As we watch Earl sweep into the somewhat downhill right-hander at the end of the long straightaway. This is a very difficult section of this racetrack because the corners are blind.
Well, it's a shame Bob has no time for sightseeing, Brock, as now he leads us down into a beautiful hollow the racers call the Boot. It's turn 6 we see here, which is slightly off-camber. This little short straightaway leading down towards turn number 7, which is decidedly downhill. So you're talking about dramatic braking going into turn number 7. In fact, a lot of braking in the Boot itself.
Turn 6 is a downhill left-hand corner, very late apex, very deceiving because it falls off all the way through. On the exit, you want to get back to the left-hand side of the road for the very steep uphill turn 7 right-hand corner, which is about a middle apex because the car will have a tendency to get a little light on the exit of the corner.
Well, coming off turn 7, Bob and the rest of the drivers just bury their throttle foot because it's a steep uphill leading up to turn number 8, which forms a sort of the heel of the Boot. It's a more than 90-degree corner, takes a little bit of braking, but then the cars just sweep through that right-hander and head uphill once again toward turn number 9. 9 is a 90-degree left-hander. Once again, a little bit of brake and then a lot of throttle. You're up back on the level now, sort of on the same elevation as a pit straight. So it's a straightaway now going into turn number 10.
Well, turn 10 for Bob Earl is very straightforward, but not upcoming turn 11. It's a wide, sweeping turn. You're anxious to have a lot of momentum coming out of here because it leads down the pit straightaway. You'll see a lot of action in turn number 11.
Turn 10 is a very high-speed left-hand corner that's fairly bumpy on the exit. You have to be very careful on the entry and turn the wheel very, very smoothly so you don't get off on the bumps on the exit and get right back to the left-hand side of the road for the entry to turn 11, which leads on to the front straightaway. Turn 11 for me is a very deceiving corner because it's very uneven on the way through and you have a tendency to use a lot of road on the way out of it.
And out of turn 11, Bob brings his Fiero down the pit straightaway across the start-finish line and prepares to set up for turn number 1.
So that's it. Another lap at Watkins Glen completed by Bob Earl, and thanks to him and to car owner Joe Huffaker from San Francisco, one of the great names in sports car construction over the years, Steve.
And we'll be keeping track of Bob's progress in the GTU class, Brock, that runs right along with these GTP cars. He'll be trying to fight off the Porsches, the Toyotas, and the Mazdas. The big news, the front row. The Porsche 962 Hans Stuck has flown in from Germany to join Bob Aiken, and the Ford Probe right alongside him, an international front row.
Sure is, Steve, because Klaus Ludwig is in that Ford Probe, and of course he is also from West Germany and has banged fenders with Hans Stuck from every great racetrack from Le Mans to Brands Hatch to Watkins Glen on repeated occasions. In fact, we've got a bunch of Europeans in this field and some of the best endurance drivers in the business.
And they better like driving in traffic, Brock, because there's going to be a lot of it after just a few laps. 55 starters for this New York Serengeti 500.
Well, I'll tell you, there's one kid in this field that likes to drive in traffic. That's Al Unser Jr., one of the rising stars in American motorsports. He's in here with the second Al Holbert car. Now, remember, Holbert and Bell won this race last year, and they brought in another Porsche 962 and put little Al in it. And boy, I'll tell you what, he can stomp on the throttle in any kind of motorsports. It's going to be interesting to see how he does in that 962.
Well, here's the view through the windshield of a Porsche 962. This is the number 67 car, driven by Jochen Mass of West Germany and California's Jim Busby, carrying the onboard camera. Boy, what a treat that's going to be today.
It sure is, Steve. As we watch the pace car lead them up through the S's, notice the field weaving around, warming those tires up. They've got 3 miles to go before they take the green flag. 500 miles here in the New York Serengeti 500. That'll make at least a couple of driver changes and perhaps 3 pit stops, maybe more, with some of the cars with a smaller fuel tank. So it's going to be a long, hard haul around this very difficult racetrack.
And as you know, Brock, 500 miles on a road course like Watkins Glen is comparable to 1,500 miles at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
The special presentation of American Sports Cavalcade is being brought to you by B.F. Goodrich, makers of high-performance TA radios. We make cars perform. And by Ford and your local Ford dealer, who invite you to see the 1986 Ford cars and trucks. Have you driven a Ford lately?
We're about ready for a start here at Watkins Glen in the Serengeti New York 500. I'm Brock Yates along with Steve Evans. That's Bruce out in California. And all eyes are on that number 5 car, Steve.
And with good reason, Brock. Look at Hans Stuck pulling away. We have got contact in the middle of the pack. That was Cyril Vandermerve coming together with John Kalajian. Kalajian's car sliding into the pit entrance. But look at the racing as they come down to turn number 1. It is Al Holbert on the point, car number 14.
And Jochen Mass right behind him. There it is, the in-car camera. Maas fighting the wheel as they head up through the S's. That right in front of him, the number 14 car of Al Holbert. That, of course, is the automobile that has carried Holbert to the championship here in the IMSA GT Series already this season.
Well, Brock, it was just amazing the move that Jochen Mass put on his fellow countrymen Hans Stuck and Klaus Ludwig to take over that second place spot going into turn number 1 in that 67 car. Boy, he is some kind of road racer.
As we watch the field sweep down into the booth, that's turn number 6 coming up. Holbert still in the point, but right behind him, Maas, and then Hans Stuck in 3rd place. And you got to be sure that Stuck, who set the lap record here, has the bit in his teeth. He is going to be a force to be reckoned with as this race unleashes.
Well, Hans, as you know, Brock, was born really to be a race car driver. His father, of the same name, drove for the old Auto Union team in the pre-war years.
They call that the golden era of automobile racing as we watch Al Holbert exit the booth, leading the field up into that sharp left-hander and heading down toward turn number 10. Holbert pulled out a little bit of a lead over Maas and Stuck.
Well, bad luck is an understatement when you talk about John Kalajian. His number 15 March car, Brock, never even got to the start-finish line. He collided with Cyril Vandermerve. Apparently, the two of them arguing over a piece of real estate out there. Kalajian, the big loser.
And very disappointed indeed as we watch 3 of the best European endurance drivers in the business, Maas, Stuck, and Ludwig, fighting it out for the 2nd spot. Al Holbert a little bit out of the picture in the lead, but Maas right on his tail. There you can see Holbert heading up the S's, about 20 car lengths on him. Pulled out a little bit, Steve, as they've undertaken his 2nd lap.
Well, all of the pre-race conversation, Brock, has been about Hans Stuck. He is such an exciting driver to watch. Look at him in the red car, number 5, trying to take over that 2nd spot. He may get it. No one has told him that you can't slide at ground effects Porsche, Brock. He does it anyway.
Down into that very fast sweeper at the end of the long straightaway. He has pulled past Maas and now has his sights set on the leader. Hans Stuck now unleashing the considerable power that number 5 962 Porsche Bob Aiken. Bob, a good driver, but that by his own admission, nowhere near as quick as Stuck. Stuck very much the quickest man in this place all weekend, and right now is starting to reel in Al Holbert for the lead.
Well, it's amazing that that red car is on any racetrack, Brock. As you know, a few weeks ago, we saw it trying to climb a tree in Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, with Jim Mullen at the wheel. It looked to be destroyed, but Aiken and crew had put it back together.
Okay, now Maas has fallen back another spot as Klaus Ludwig pushes by him in the probe. So the probe now up into 3rd place, starting to make its move. Reliability, a little bit of a problem so far with the probe, but very quick in qualifying, and an automobile that is sure to be reckoned with as they get the bugs worked out.
Well, Al Holbert better be watching his rear-view mirrors, Brock, because here, coming out onto the pit straightaway, is Hans Stuck going after him.
Well, let's not forget, he got kind of a bad start, balked a little bit as he took the green flag and fell back to 4th, but now worked his way up to a point where he is going to try to set up the current leader, Al Holbert, heading down into the this sweeper they call the S's here at Watkins Glen. Hans Stuck drives that car about as hard as anybody. Back in the pits, this is the Cyril Vandermeer car getting a new nose fitted to it. Notice the side of the automobile badly damaged, but I think maybe you'll be able to get back underway, Steve.
Well, they've got all the spare fiberglass for that March car. If they could just find something to attach it to, it just ground the door right off of the automobile. And here, if you look closely, back a few rows right there, you will see the two cars come together. Kalajian on the outside is just rammed by Vandermeer, but Kalajian didn't do a thing wrong, Brock.
Apparently not, but it's just one of those incidents that happens when people scramble for position at the start. As we watch Vandermeer's car being repaired with just rolls and rolls of super tape and some spare fiberglass bodywork, it looks as if the suspension is okay. That is a surprise, Steve. That's Bob Wallach, who is driving the Bruce Levin Porsche 962, one of the real contenders here, and he is in a very early stop, and it looks like that car may be out. Wallach is getting out of the automobile, unhooks his umbilical cords. That's the cooling suit and the communication system, taking his helmet off. Apparently, that car is finished, and that is very much a surprise.
Look at this race for third spot, Brock. On the inside, the red and white number 16 car with Drake Olson at the wheel. He is going to go underneath Klaus Ludwig of the Ford Probe. What a beautiful pass. And look at this. Now it's Jochen Mass. We're looking through his windshield. He, too, has gotten around the Probe.
Well, Ludwig bobbled a little bit in turn one, and both those guys got past as we watch Drake Olson, the young man who has just sent this Camel GT circuit on its ear this year at the wheel of the Rob Dyson Porsche 962. He came out of nowhere to win a Lime Rock and then teamed up with Bobby Rahal to win at Elkhart Lake as we watch Jochen Mass chase this young man into the sweeper. And I'll tell you what, it's a rare occurrence when a relative youngster like Drake Olson can blow off a veteran like Jochen Mass as convincingly as he just did.
Well, Brock, here is a leaderboard that is subject to change at any moment, as we've seen. Al Holbert on the point, followed by the German Hans Stuck, the hungry Drake Olson. We'll be back.
We've got a new leader here at Watkins Glen at the Serengeti New York 500, and it's no surprise that beautiful red and white number 5 Porsche 962 with German Hans Stuck has run right past Al Holbert to take the lead.
Well, I'll tell you, Hans Stuck has made a believer out of me, Brock. All the stories are true. The only other appearance Hans made this season was at Sebring, where he broke the all-time track record and has now passed this man, Al Holbert, in car number 14, for the lead here at Watkins Glen. Well, there's no question that Hans Stuck is a very aggressive driver. Some use the word crazy, but I don't think that's appropriate. He seems to know what he's doing every time he turns that steering wheel left or right. Earlier, I talked to him about his driving.
How do you drive Watkins Glen successfully? Always flat out.
That's what you call a simple answer to a complex problem as we watch Hans Stuck begin to stretch it out a little bit over Al Holbert in that championship-winning 962 of his. That number 55 Fiero, that's Bob Earl. Remember him? He gave us a ride around Watkins Glen. Right now, he is leading the GTU division, but right behind him is Chris Cord in his Toyota. So that is going to be a tight race. Those guys have dueled all season long, Steve.
One of the most impressive performances we saw here, Brock, came at Laguna Seca when we saw Bob Earl come from dead last and win the GTU class. That is some little car.
And some driver as well. Bob Earl with all kinds of experience in open-wheel Formula Atlantic cars and a lot of sports car experience. One of the more underrated drivers in the United States, in my opinion. And right behind him, Chris Cord from the famous automobile family, driving one of Dan Gurney's cars, Steve. That Toyota, of course, from the All-American Racer Stables in Santa Ana, California. And they, too, have been successful in this GTU category this year.
And they are dramatically different automobiles. The mid-engine Fiero that was actually debuted right along with the Street Fiero, the production car. The first time that that's ever been done that I know of by a Detroit factory, building a new car to race parallel to the project.
Okay, Steve, remember we talked about Al Unser Jr. He is in the sister car to the number 14, driven by Al Holbert. His number 1 Porsche is now being challenged up the long back straightaway by Pete Halsmer in the number 68 Porsche, and right behind him is Brian Redmond in the other Jaguar.
And Brock, the Al Holbert team came here with 2 race cars and 3 drivers. Derek Bell is standing by to relieve either of these. He will have his choice of automobiles. They hope to finish him number 2 in IMSA points to Al Holbert, who has already clinched the series.
So it will be maybe Al Unser Jr. giving way to Derek Bell. Maybe he'll get in with Al Holbert. So right now, 2 cars, as you say, for 3 drivers. Halsmer, Unser, and Redmond in a good battle for that 6th spot. They're about to overtake our GTU leaders. That's Bob Earl, closely followed by Chris Cord. But there goes Halsmer by. There goes Al Unser Jr. by as they sweep into that sharp right-hander, turn number 8, exiting the boot.
Pete Halsmer and Al Unser Jr., for that matter, Brock, very versatile drivers. Both, of course, have competed in Indy cars, some stock car cars, even some dirt track racing for little Al.
He sure was good in the sprint cars. He could barely see over the cowling when he was a kid when he started out in Albuquerque. As we watch Bob Tullius in the number 44 Jaguar now being challenged by David Hobbs in the number 40 Lola Corvette. Remember, we talked about him being the quickest car in this racetrack.
But, unfortunately, the Lola chassis doesn't seem to like the bumps on this racetrack at all, Brock. They've been trying to get the chassis set up properly, but just haven't found the exact combination. You see back here now in 10th spot. But that turbocharged Chevrolet V6 engine has got an awful lot of horsepower. Look at this. He makes a move on Tullius. It is David. Wait a minute, Brock. I think Tullius has got some problems. That car is slowing down.
It sure is. So that Jaguar may be headed for the pits in the next lap as we watch David Hobbs moving into the 9th spot. That car is a 2-year-old chassis out of the Rick Hendricks team. They've got some new Lolas on order. And believe me, that is going to be a force to be reckoned with in this kind of racing in the next season. As we watch Al Hobart now being challenged for 2nd spot by Drake Olson. Drake Olson came out of the field, remember, and has moved up through the pack and now has this man, the current champion of this series, in his sights.
Well, after watching Al Hobart for a couple of seasons, Brock, I really wonder if he doesn't have the boost back down in that car, content to let Hans Stuck go out there and run flat out. Well, here's big problems for car number 45. That is Bill Adams. And look at the left rear tire. It is just shredded. Now, it may have clipped an oil line or an oil cooler that is responsible for all that smoke, but that car is in big trouble.
That's too bad. That's the Phil Conti turbocharged Buick that's been very quick in practice all season long, but it's just been plagued with bad luck all season. A tough break for Bill Adams, one of the most genial and cooperative and talented drivers in this business, as he will probably have to make a full lap trying to get back into the pits, but I don't know whether he's going to make it or not. Look at this, a challenge for 2nd spot. That's Drake Olson, the number 16 Porsche 962, trying to move in on Al Hobart. Notice both cars have their headlights on. That is the warn, the slower automobiles that they're coming through. Here comes Olson on the inside up the long straightaway. You get a look at it, the in-car camera of Jochen Mass. That is Hobart and Olson right in front of him, Steve. What a race.
And Olson is now in sole possession of the 2nd position with Al Hobart and Jochen Mass right behind him. And 3 very different drivers, Brock. The youngster, Drake Olson, just this season having his first impact on professional racing. Then Al Hobart, who's won more IMSA races, I think, than anybody else. And then Jochen Mass, a big, big name all over the European continent.
Well, Drake Olson must have used the boost knob coming up that back straightaway to get by Hobart, and it's going to be hard for Hobart to repass in this particular part of the racetrack. So Drake Olson will probably go by the pits in 2nd spot as we watch Bob Tullius limping into the pits. It looks like maybe a tire's down, Steve. That is the team leader, of course. He has brought these 2 Jaguars in here. He is getting out of the automobile, and his young protege, Chip Robinson, a fine, fine young driver from New Jersey, is climbing in to take a relief spin in that automobile. So there's a routine pit stop underway, but it looks like there's a full tire change underway as well.
Well, the first attention by the crew went to that right rear tire, so that might have been what brought Bob Tullius into the pits, Brock.
Very possibly, but it looks like they're going to get back underway in just a few moments. As we go back to the race for 3rd, that is Hobart, right behind him, Jochen Mass. Notice the duct in front of Mass's steering wheel. That is a fresh air duct. These automobiles, enclosed like they are, can get very, very hot inside. That's one of the reasons why you get so much relief driving. You get enormous fatigue in these cars. High cornering forces throws the drivers around and really tires them out very quickly. As we watch Mass trying to challenge Hobart up that back straightaway. Almost 200 miles an hour, hard on the brakes into that downhill sweeper they call the sweeper here at Watkins Glen, heading toward the boot.
Well, I have a feeling, Brock, now that everybody is playing with that boost knob, just for position purposes, if nothing else. Remember, the more boost you run, the poorer your fuel economy, and that could be a factor in the latter stages of this race.
Okay, Olson leads Hobart into that hard right-hander and heading back up the hill toward turn number 8. Maas right behind him, but look at this. Hobart and Olson seem to be able to pull Jochen a little bit up there. They've got a couple of car lengths on him heading up toward turn 8. Now Maas hard on the brakes, sweeps that car into the corner, probably a 3rd gear.
Big trouble, Brock, in turn number 11. That is Chris Cord of the Dan Gurney number 99 Toyota, who was running second in the GTU class. That car is just impaled against the wall. The corner workers trying to dig through the debris to help him get out of the automobile.
Well, Steve, we've got a full course yellow, which is becoming more and more common in IMSA racing these days. It used to be they just throw the yellow on the corner where the incident occurred, but right now they back them down all the way around the racetrack. As Stuck leads it, 3 other Porsches right behind him, and the lone Ford with Klaus Ludwig in 5th place. We'll be back with more of the Serengeti New York 500 after
a full course caution here at the Serengeti New York 500 at Watkins Glen has brought about some pit activity. That is the number 14 Porsche of Al Holbert in for fuel, gas, a clean windshield, and a new driver, Brock Yates.
Well, we're going to get a flurry of pit stops, I would imagine, Steve, as the Lowenbrow crew gets finished with that Porsche 962. Good news, by the way, Chris Cord is okay. The car is still up against that fence, and it's going to keep things slowed down here.
Well, the smiling Englishman, Derek Bell, is now strapped into car number 14, and exiting the pits is the Ford Probe. Also on board, a relief driver, that is Doc Bundy, but he's having some problems getting it going.
He sure is. The car stalled, and there goes the crew just kind of giving him a bump start down pit lane, and that is going to back him up a little bit as Doc Bundy finally gets it fired up, and here comes the Probe, gaining speed down this wide pit lane here at Watkins Glen and down onto the racetrack. We're going to see some more stops, though, Steve, guaranteed. And yes, here comes Drake Olson, currently in the 2nd spot. He's going to come in for a stop. We don't know whether he's going to take on a relief driver or not. Right behind him, Jochen Maas in the 67 Porsche. Yes, there will be a driver change in 16. Bryce Cobb replaces Drake Olson. See Olson trying to help his teammate. Get ready. Here comes the Jaguar, Steve.
That is Brian Redden in the 04 Jag. Normally, they do change drivers on the first stop, but no driver change here. This is Little Al Unser in car number 1. Now, this is Jochen Maas. He is also staying in the car, but there is Hurley Haywood going in place of Brian Redmond. Jochen Maas taking on fuel, trying to get a clean windshield, but he is going to stay in the car. He waves off Jim Busby.
The Jaguar still up on his jack stands, getting 4 tires changed. That's the Moss car getting its windshield clean. Look at the oil all over that. And there goes Bryce Cobb taking over for Drake Olson.
Jochen Maas going back out into the front. Wait a minute, he is stopping because the air hose and air wrench from the 16 car were still stretched out across the pit lane there. So that impeded the progress of Jochen Maas. He will not be a happy German.
Nor would team owner Jim Busby if that air wrench tore up the bottom side of his Porsche. As we watch the 04 Jag now with Hurley Haywood at the wheel getting underway.
But you know the big question, Brock, where is Hans Stuck?
Well, Hans Stuck is still out on the racetrack. That's Little Al Unser in the number 1 Porsche 962. He is, of course, the relief man for the Holbert team, but he is going. I wonder if he's going to run this thing solo, Steve.
Well, the way it's setting up, Brock, that is likely. I mean, who's going to relieve him? Al Holbert just got out of the car. He's tired. Now, here comes the number 68 car. This is Pete Halsber. The co-driver is John Morton. Morton opens the door. Halsber said, yes, please take the wheel of this thing.
Well, it's not a particularly warm day here in the middle 60s, but plenty warm enough inside that cockpit where you got about 700 horsepower percolating right behind your neck. The caution flag still out, and right behind him, Hans Stuck. And as you said earlier, Steve, he's out there, and he doesn't look like he's going to come in on this lap at least. Well, Brock, you figure every contender in this race saw that yellow flag and dashed with the pits, except Hans Stuck. Here we see John Morton going back out. You really wonder if that's the strategy of the team or just Hans out there. They're going to have to take the keys away from him. And wondering himself, his owner and co-driver Bob Aiken, who is all dressed up with nothing to drive. As Hans Stuck continues to stay out on the racetrack, now they're even displaying a pit board to him, which he ignores. So, while we're still under caution, let's go out to California and see Ed Bruce.
Steve, I'd like to show you a beautiful race car with an interesting history. It's a 1914 Grand Prix Mercedes. It was one of a 5-car Mercedes team known as the Great White Team. This car has a 4.5-liter, 4-cylinder, single overhead camshaft engine. It was designed by Paul Damer and driven by Paulette. It has a very unique feature of individually fabricated welded cylinders and water jackets. Also, the car was equipped with a cockpit-operated foot pump lubrication system, so the driver could prime more lubricant to the engine while in the race. At that time, the French Peugeot team was the fastest on the racing circuit, so Mercedes entered this car as a rabbit in the field. It would run flat out at the start of the race, and the Peugeots would race right behind. Mercedes used this strategy, so by the end of the race, the top Peugeots would have burned out. leaving the other Mercedes cars to capture the checkered flag. Oh, one other little bit of history. When World War I broke out, this same Mercedes engine powered the Albertson fighter planes. Their dogfights over Europe. Now back to Watkins Glen.
Thanks, Ed. Fascinating stuff, as usual, from the Briggs Cunningham Museum as we watch the pace car lead the field up the back straight here at Watkins Glen. Stuck still leads it, but we've got a fresh Derek Bell in the Al Holbert car and 3 more Porsches right behind him. I guess the big question is, Steve Evans, will Hans Stuck ever stop?
You know, maybe he hopes to catch another yellow. Okay, if he does, he'll be a genius. If he doesn't, his strategy here will be seriously questioned. We'll be back with more from the Serengeti New York 500 right after this.
The green is out at Watkins Glen. This is the Serengeti New York 500. I'm Brock Yates along with Steve Evans. Ed Bruce out in California. And that number 14 Porsche 962 has one of the best drivers in the world at the wheel. That's Derek Bell, who is in second place in the point standings here in the IMSA GT Series and trying to maintain that points lead, Steve.
Well, Jochen Maas, Brock, has got his sights set on Al Unser Jr., the car just up in front of him. Unser is traveling right now in the 3rd spot, and in the 4th position is Maas. Now, Maas going to try him on the inside, but not enough.
Sweeping up through turn number 7, up that hill. Unser holds on to the lead. Maas falls back a little bit. It seems as if those 962s of the Holbert team have a bunch of power going up that particular part of the racetrack.
Oh, I agree with you, Brock, and you can see right here that Jochen Maas is having trouble mustering enough power to get around the lap car there, Pierre Honegger. These pictures are courtesy of B.F. Goodrich, makers of TA high-tech radials. We make cars perform.
So, Jochen Maas loses a few feet to Al Unser Jr. as they sweep into turn number 10. Trying now, though, to catch up. You get a good look through that in-car camera. All right, leading this pack is Price Cobb in the number 16 Porsche. He is in 5th place. Right behind him, Chip Robinson back in 10th, a lap down. Then there's Hurley Haywood in 6th, and Doc Bundy in the Ford Probe in 7th spot as they come down the finishing straight. Price Cobb leads this little group, and look at Haywood goes underneath his teammate Chip Robinson, and right behind him, Doc Bundy.
Now, Doc Bundy told me earlier, Brock, that they just hope to finish the Ford Pro. He said, we have to resist the temptation of getting on the boost. We'd like to finish 2nd, 3rd, 4th. We just want to finish.
Okay, this little group goes by. Once again, Pierre Honegger leading it in that number 70 car, but he is not in contention at the moment. In the front of your screen, that is the number 86 car, now driven by car owner Bruce Levin. Remember, we saw Bob Wallach bring it into the pits. He had a broken half shaft. They worked on it for a while, and now back on the racetrack, way out of contention.
Now, Doc Bundy also gets around Chip Robinson. So Bundy keeping pace with Hurley Haywood in the 04 Jaguar, who is right on the rear spoiler of Price Cobb.
Good race here for 5th spot. Price Cobb taking a little time to get used to the automobile. He is kind of a newcomer in this Rob Dyson team. They've had a couple of other drivers, namely Bobby Rahal in their seat along with Greg Olson. And Price Cobb, though, now just intent on holding off the veteran Hurley Haywood.
And here comes Price Cobb getting around Bruce Levin. Levin actually lets him go by. Now, Cobb, in many ways, Brock, is auditioning for a full-time position on this team. He has lots of Formula Atlantic experience. He's from the state of Texas. And I would think that car owner Rob Dyson would be most impressed at this point.
Well, he's certainly holding off Hurley Haywood, who is one of the very best drivers in this kind of competition, as they head down into turn number 10. Completing that lap with just about the same position they started out with. Hurley Haywood 6th, Price Cobb in the 5th spot. Okay, this is a turbocharged car in the form of the Porsche versus a normally aspirated V12 with the Jaguar. Don't forget, that's a basically production engine, much like you'll find in their production sedans and sports coupes.
The Ford Probe also basically a production-style engine. Look at this move. This is Hurley Haywood. Price Cobb thinking, where did he come from?
We got down on the inside as they headed down into the S's and just blew right past him. It could be, too, that Price Cobb is just holding back a little bit. Their object, of course, is to finish. This is a long race. And the temptation, of course, in that Porsche is to just twist that boost knob and blow right past him. But it looks as if Price Cobb is kind of taking the inside line and just holding back a little bit. Hurley Haywood, though, now rides that Jaguar right up into 5th spot. The highest position so far for these normally aspirated cars today in this race.
And right now it is Doc Bundy in the Ford Probe getting around Price Cobb. You've got to wonder right now if maybe that car isn't a little bit down on horsepower. It doesn't seem to have the muscle that it showed Ford Drake Olson. And you know, Brock, that yellow flag came out earlier than most of these cars had planned on stopping. Most of them took advantage of it, except for our leader, Hans Stuck. And that is going to upset, I think, some of the pit strategy. It could be very tight now for these cars to make it on 2 stops.
Right indeed. As we watch Doc Bundy, there is Price Cobb, and right behind him, Chip Robinson. Remember, he's a lap down and back in 10th place in that number 44 Jaguar.
Well, if Robinson also gets around Price Cobb, I would have to say for sure, Brock, that car's got some problems.
Well, he's certainly not showing any, as you say, anywhere near the speed that Drake Olson showed earlier in the going. All right, that is your leader, and he is still flying low. Hans Stuck up the back straightaway at about maybe 190 miles an hour. You got to wonder when he's going to stop because the fuel light's going to come on there fairly soon. But Hans Stuck, he just likes to stand on the gas. An interesting piece of strategy, though, intentional or otherwise, that he didn't stop during that yellow flag. That could be very costly for him right now as we watch Jochen Mass in the middle of that race for 3rd place, sweeping by one of the slower automobiles, going down into the boot, hard on it in that 962. The headlights on, saying, I'm coming through, guys.
And once he can get through traffic, that's the one he wants. Al Unser Jr. riding in 3rd spot. Buckle up. You're riding with Jochen Mass.
That's turn number 7 here at Watkins Glen. You see it's a big uphill sweeper where a lot of power is required, and it doesn't look like Jochen's got as much as some of the other cars have. All day long, we watched him fall back just a little bit as he's competed with the leaders going up this steep hill.
But with these turbocharged cars, Brock, you just can't second-guess these guys. They've got that internal boost control now, something they will not have next year.
That's right. That goes away in the rules next year, which is going to handicap the Porsches a little bit. They're going to have to set that boost at the start of the race and live with it no matter how high or how low it might be. Oh, wait a minute. That's the number 5 car. Hans Stuck slowing. Jochen Mass just blasted by him. There goes Stuck, kind of coasting down through turn number 11 and heading toward the pits. He's got big problems, Steve, or maybe he's run out of gas.
Could be. There's no smoke. There's no oil. Here is Stuck weaving into the pit lane. I think there may be some. He has got a broken half shovel. I'll bet anything, Brock. That was not Hans steering that car. That was the car steering itself.
Well, you might guess in the old days that it was an NASCAR car sloshing the fuel around in the tank to get into the pits, but I don't think that's the case. I think you're right. It could be a terminally hurt automobile here. That's car owner Bob Aiken, though. He's going to climb into the automobile.
But, Brock, I don't know if he's going to go anywhere. There you see Hans Stuck in the black helmet telling the crew, wait a minute, there's something wrong back here, guys.
And the leader now, Derek Bell, in the number 14 car he shares so successfully with Al Holbert in these long-distance races, taking over from a wounded Hans Stuck, a man who dominated the race early in the going. But right now, it's the English veteran Derek Bell just coasting, relatively unchallenged at this particular point. A quick pit stop, a driver change, as we watch Bob Aiken disappointed, hoping maybe against hope that they can get that car back out on the racetrack and hopefully back into the lead where it's been all day.
Well, the car that so dominated the early going here at the Serengeti New York 500 is still in the pit area. The number 5 machine brought in by starting driver Hans Stuck. Bob Aiken, the co-driver, in the car, but you see Hans right here, helmet off, shaking his head. It's a no-go. It is broken. Something wrong with that 962 Porsche. And what a shame for Bob Aiken, who worked so hard along with the crew to get that car repaired after a bad crash just a few weeks ago. A disgusted crew throws down their rags. They know that it is all over. We're yet really to find out what went wrong with the car, but when Hans brought it into the pits, it obviously had steering problems. Brock is with Hans Stuck.
Hans, what's the problem with the car?
I tell you, I am so disappointed you won't believe it. Because when I had the lead, it was so easy. Bobby Aiken could have driven the car. It was just nothing. And then a drive shaft broke.
Did you know you had troubles when you were coming in?
Oh, yes, you bet. I had it on the straight away on the back. I almost lost the car on this, you know.
We're very sorry. Excellent drive. You know, Wallach broke a drive shaft as well.
It's a pity, you know. I'm 100% sure it would have been a win today because it was so easy. Look, I hardly don't sweat, you know. It's fantastic. The car was beautiful. Wow. Until it broke.
We're sorry you're out.
That's life.
Boy, I'll buy a ticket any day to watch that man race. He just looks fast. And I think right now, Hans Duck will become a big Derek Bell fan. Bell is now leading this race. The two of them hope to clinch the World Endurance Champion as co-drivers next weekend in Europe.
Okay, let's go back to the race for 6th spot. That's Bryce Cobb in the number 16 Porsche, being followed by the 68 car, now driven by John Morton. Remember, that car was started by Pete Halsmer, but right now, Morton is moving up on Bryce Cobb. Cobb a little bit tentative, it seems to me, Steve, that he hasn't driven with quite the authority that Drake Lawson has run with. As you said, though, earlier, he's not as experienced as we watch Morton move by Bryce Cobb and pick up that 6th spot. So that BFG car, the car that is the teammate of Jochen Mass's, moving up through the field. A fine driver, John Morton. And now let's go to Ed Bruce at the Briggs Cunningham Museum.
Brock, when you think of raw speed and beauty in a race car, many names come to mind. Certainly the GTP cars we're watching today, but I'd like to add one more name to that list. Ferrari, say a 1948 model 166 Corsa. This car not only looks great, it flies. With Luigi Canetti at the wheel, this Ferrari won the very first 12-hour Paris Grand Prix back in 1948. It also held the 100-mile and 200-kilometer world record times and set the world Class E 1-hour record with an average speed of over 126 miles an hour. The power plant in this Ferrari is a V12 with an overhead cam in each bank. Its 122 cubic inch 2-liter engine was one of the first 12-cylinder models designed by the famous race designer Colombo. It has room for two, driver and mechanic. And one other interesting note to Ferrari fans. This 166 Corsa was the very first Ferrari ever brought into the United States. It made such a dramatic impact that race driver Luigi Canetti became a distributor for Ferrari in the U.S. and went on to become the largest distributor in the country. Back to Brock and Steve.
Thank you, Ed. And here's a man who wishes he had a riding mechanic. There's some big problems with the number 68 Porsche driven by John Morton. He is limping that car to the pit area. Now, it could be a loose oil line, whatever, but that's ominous-looking smoke. And it's a shame to see a driver of Morton's caliber out this early. He won at Riverside this very season. In fact, he makes his living, Brock, sorting out race cars for other people. That's how good he is.
Well, as we watch John come off the line, this is Bryce Cobb in the pits with the Rob Dyson number 16 car. Bryce is a fine young driver, got a great future ahead of him. A lot of people feel that between he and Drake Olson, a couple of real future stars are running in this number 16 automobile.
And as it was in the pits, Brock, the crew looked it over from stem to stern as if to say there's something wrong with this car. We just don't know what. That is not smoke, by the way. That's just grease sweep that was laid down.
So, Bryce Cobb underway. Oh, bad news. Bob Earl, the number 55 Humpiker Fiero, just drifting along on the outside of the racetrack. It looks like a terminal ailment there for that car that went leading the GTU category and has run so well here. Remember, he had a good fight earlier with Chris Cord before Chris crashed, and now Bob Earl out as well. So we've got the Bell Holbert number 14 car, so familiar in the lead here in these kind of competitions, holding down the number 1 spot. And their teammate driving solo, Al Unser Jr. in second.
Here at Watkins, Glen, New York, we've talked about the dominance of the Porsches, the challenge of the Ford Probe. Well, running a good race is the rather new Corvette GTP car. David Hobbs is out sitting on the pit wall. Australian Vern Schuppan now at the wheel of a beautiful black and silver car. And Brock, there's a world-class driver, Schuppan.
He sure is, but I'm afraid not today is he going to have a chance to demonstrate his skills, because it looks like the Corvette is slowing. And yes, he's pulled off the racetrack, heading up the hill into the S's, Steve. Yep, Vern is backing it off clear of harm's way. What a tough break. That automobile, as we said earlier, has enormous potential. But its retirement will permit this car, the number 44 Jaguar driven by Chip Robinson, to move up into the 6th spot. Good race going on back here, Steve.
Now, the green and white Jaguar is being chased by Bryce Cobb in the red number 16 car. Now, it is Robinson in 6th, Bryce Cobb in 7th, but both of them are a lap down. And in the 5th position is Doc Bundy in the Ford Probe. He is on the same lap with the leader.
At the wheel of the number 44 car is one of the other young lions in this business, Chip Robinson from New Jersey. Very highly thought of by car owner Bob Tullius, and you'll see a lot more of him in the years to come. But right now, he is battling it out with Bryce Cobb for that 6th spot. Remember, Price and his teammate Drake Olson had that automobile up as high as 2nd, but just a series of mishaps and misfortunes have kind of backed him down, and including that last unscheduled stop that Cobb had to make. Whoa, look at this, a spin by Chip Robinson. He spins coming up the hill, coming out of turn 7. Of course, scrubs off a lot of speed because he's going uphill, but he loses that 6th spot. Chip Robinson, frustrated, I'm sure, accelerates up through the gears and tries to get back up to speed, but in the meantime, Bryce Cobb is long gone in the number 16 Porsche. It may be that Chip's going to have to come into the pits. He could have flat-spotted a tire. Okay, let's go to Steve with Drake Olson.
Well, Drake, I know you ran to the wall in surprise as the car came in as Price brought it in, and apparently for a windshield clean more than anything else.
Yeah, Steve, that seems to be what happened. He was probably following a competitor that was having an oiling problem and couldn't get by him, and that's part of the hazards of endurance racing, or any kind of racing, I guess.
As long as he was in, he at least got a little bit of fuel.
Yeah, now he's got full tank, and he can go for an hour and 10 minutes, depending, and so that's okay.
Of course, the unwitting culprit that Drake's referring to is John Morton, whose engine blew and put that oil on the windshield of the number 16. All right, let's get back in the cockpit with Jochen Mass. He is currently in 3rd place, driving hard to try to overtake the 2nd place automobile right in front of him, and that is Al Unser Jr.
Well, suddenly, Jochen Mass is horsepower, Brock, as he has not displayed all day. Is it the knob? You'd have to think so.
Right down the inside, right up against the pit lane wall. He moved on the inside down through turn number 1 to take over that 2nd spot. So, Jochen Mass right now in front of Al Unser Jr., driving solo in the number 1 Porsche. What a drive for this young man from Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's barely old enough to vote, and already the racing press is running out of superlatives, Steve.
Oh, indeed. And in the pit area, as the suspicion comes, Chip Robinson. Now, they'll check the tires to make sure he didn't flat spot any of them in that spin. And Bob Tullius is getting back in the car to finish the race. Tullius started it. He will finish it. Now, the Corvette has been towed back to the pit area, and Brock Yates is down there to find out what went wrong. Brock?
Well, Vern, here we go again. The world's most oft-asked question in motorsports. What happened to the car?
We broke a CV joint. Just lost the drive. Everything was running fine, but the track's so bumpy, it broke a drive shaft, constant velocity joint.
I know the Corvette crew had been trying to reduce the ground effects a bit to give the car more travel to handle those bumps. Apparently still not enough. As we look at the Jaguar pit, Bob Tullius is trying to get back underway.
Okay, there goes Tullius in a very organized Jaguar operation here. Running 2 cars in an endurance race is a very complex operation indeed. As we watch Tullius go down pit lane, only the Lowenbrow team of Al Holbert's really trying it here today, other than the Jaguars. Okay, let's go to Steve to find out what happened to Chip Robinson.
Well, Chip, a little more excitement out there than you bargained for. Got her into a spin.
Yeah, I was coming up the hill, it got a little loose, and I just couldn't catch it.
Does that upset your pit timing at all here as far as your strategy was concerned?
No, I don't think it really does. You know, Bob came in earlier with a flat, and we made the driver change there then instead of late in the race. So he'll do a full fuel load now, which should bring us right back to the end of the race. So we don't have to stop again.
So Chip Robinson tells us that spin of his doesn't do a great deal of damage to his team effort. Remember the old days, Steve, when you could pull into your own service station and the guy'd come out and clean your windshield? Well, that's what's happening to Jim Busby, but I can't remember it happening to me for quite a while.
Well, when it did, this is usually the result, just about what Jim got, a half-done job. I don't even know how he sees out of that thing. It's a good thing there's no rain in the forecast, Brock, because the windshield wipers fell off while they were in there. You know, this is a car that Jim normally co-drives with Rick New, but occasionally they bring him what they call a guest driver, Jochen Mass today.
And like so many of the hired guns that show up here in races like this, Mass is a Formula One driver who has gotten a little bit past it. Derek Bell, David Hobbs, Harnstruck, all like him. This is the Derek Bell Porsche that has fallen back to second place after a pit stop. His teammate, though, Al Unser Jr., now has the lead, Steve.
He does, but he's coming into the pits, Brock. Here comes Al Unser Jr. You can tell the difference between the two cars, not only by the number, but you saw that little red swatch on the right front corner of the automobile. Now, he is apparently not going to get out of the car. Al Holbert offering him some refreshment. The crew building on some new tires, fuel, obviously. Little Al is going to go solo the entire 500 miles. You know, we said that they have two 962s. That's not totally accurate. This car is a replica 962. They only made about 10 of them, and Porsche said no more. So Holbert and crew just took a look at the chassis, duplicated it, bolted on all the Porsche spare parts they have, and they've really got a clone car.
By the way, Steve, that little red patch is to permit the guys with the pit boards to tell the two cars apart as they come at them down the front straightaway. That is Al Holbert. Remember now, though, if their car, the number 14 automobile, breaks, they will bring Al Unser Jr. in and put Derek Bell in because they are after the points for the second place in the standings, and that is the object for having two cars out here today.
Well, Unser Jr., Brock, just barely got out of the pit area in time to hold on to his lead. Derek Bell is just a few car lengths behind him, and you wonder, even though this is a team effort, Al Unser Jr. still loves to take checkered flags. He may not move over.
That is the Jaguar of Hurley Haywood coming into the pits here at Watkins, Glen, New York, as the Serengeti New York 500 unwinds in spectacular fashion. The veteran endurance driver from Florida will climb out, and his English cohort, Brian Redmond, will get into the car. Currently fourth place, Steve, but they're a lap down.
I always enjoy the Jaguar pit stops, Brock. No one seems to have quite their precision, and I think that's due to the leadership of Bob Tullius. He's a military man. He thinks that way. Very structured. Everyone has their job. Quite a stop. And boy, this was a quick one.
It sure was. When you consider that the drivers have to change and rebuckle their seatbelts, that is a slow process. They took on fuel, changed a couple of tires, and got a new man behind the wheel, and one of the very best in the business, Brian Redmond. He is one of those men that you kind of imagine flew Spitfires during World War II, Steve, a total pro.
Well, look at these two guys fly. That is the battle for the lead. Both are Al Holbert-owned Porsches. In the lead, Al Unser Jr., Albuquerque, New Mexico. Right behind him comes Derek Bell, one of the most pleasant gentlemen I have ever met in motorsports. Always has a big smile, and someday when he gets out of the cockpit, hopes to do what you and I are doing today, Brock, television commentary.
Well, you wonder whether or not that's going to be a battle or whether or not Al Unser Jr. will give way to the team leader who is here to get some points. But you said earlier, he's a race driver through and through, comes from a great racing family, maybe the greatest racing family in the history of the sport, from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it will be interesting to see what he does. Right now, though, it looks as if Derek Bell is going to get by him and take over the lead, and I would imagine that that was a pass that both drivers agreed upon.
I think you're absolutely right. The cars are very evenly matched, but don't be surprised if they still don't have some fun.
Right, Derek Bell now leading here at Watkins Glen. Right behind him now, teammate and solo driver Al Unser Jr. Remember, you can now tell the cars apart because of that little red patch on the right front fender of Al Unser Jr.'s car. That's Derek Bell sweeping up through turn number 7, applying the boost as they head up that hill and weave through some of the slower traffic.
And enjoying this kind of dominance, running first and second, you can bet that neither driver is going to take a chance here, passing another car. They don't want to hit anything. And here is Jack Baldwin, the number 76 Mazda. Now with Bob Earl out of the race, also Chris Cord out, it looks like Jack Baldwin is going to clinch the championship for the second year in a row in the GTU category.
Well, last season, Jack had a relatively easy time of it, but this year, with the arrival of Earl and Cord in the Toyota and Pontiac entries, he had a difficult time, but he's a very steady driver, a very aggressive driver as well, and has held on with that RX-7 of his to perhaps repeat. All he has to do is just run out the race here at Watkins Glen, and he will be a second-year title holder in GTU. An excellent piece of work by this young man from Georgia.
Jack is talking about stepping up to the GT class next year. It'll be interesting to see what he chooses. How about Derek Bell? He is just romping and stomping.
He sure is, Steve. Just kind of a walk in the park right now. Behind him, teammate Al Unser Jr., we know isn't challenging him, so he's just sitting right out front. As we watch Klaus Ludwig down inside in the Ford Probe try to get by Al Unser Jr., and no way. He got it sideways and saved it, but for a lot of other drivers, he'd have been off in the weeds in a big way.
Well, Al Unser Jr., he didn't even slow down, Brock, or look back. That was a hit and run.
So there is the culprit, if there was one in that little incident. It wasn't really. Al Unser Jr. just smoking it up the back straightaway as we move through the field. But look at that. It looked as if we saw some pieces fly off. Yes, there's fire underneath that number 1 962, Steve.
And he knows something's wrong, Brock. He is slowing. Let's hope he can get it back to the pit area. Well, first he's going to take it off in the grass. I doubt that he knows there's any fire underneath, but he certainly can hear or feel something.
Well, there's no running gear up there, and it looks as if there's something stuck underneath the spoiler of the car, so it may be some debris picked up on the racetrack. All right, Jim Busby, currently third place, off the back straightaway, and in front of him, a target of opportunity in the form of number 1, Al Unser Jr. He passed him. That moves him up into the second spot. So the number 67 Porsche 962 of Busby and Watkins fight their way back into second spot.
Busby at 43 has had a long racing career. Actually started in drag racing, then moved into Formula Ford. Still has a very messy windshield, as you can see, into Formula 5000 cars, where he was seriously injured, vowed to never drive an open-wheel car again. Really enjoys the GTP prototype machines.
So we watch Busby accelerate onto turn number 7 and climb the hill toward turn number 8. Leader Derek Bell is way out of sight up ahead of him, so Busby's going to have to drive the wheels off that car to catch up. But right now, Al Unser Jr. is underway, and we can see an object stuck underneath that automobile. Al Unser Jr. obviously headed for the pits, a disappointed young man, as the closing laps of the Serengeti New York 500 unfold here at Watkins Glen. We'll be back.
Well, here at Watkins Glen, New York, at the Serengeti New York 500, Al Unser Jr. brings the number 1 Porsche into the pit area. You know, we told you earlier there's something stuck up under the nose of that car, and we're about to find out what it is, Brock Yates.
Well, there they go. About 12 guys trying to get underneath the front of that car to find out what's going on. Looks like the whole Al Albert crew is under there, and they're going to get something out as we watch. Yeah, he's moving ahead. The car is clear. So Unser gets underway, and we're going to find out in just a second what happened to that automobile. Unfortunately, it drops him way back to fifth spot. He lost a full lap while he had to stop out there in the racetrack and then limp that car back in. And there it is.
It's a muffler, Brock. It's a, you know, the only cars that race with mufflers are Mazdas. So apparently that came unattached from a Mazda and got picked up by a Porsche.
Well, a tough break indeed, because they were sitting 1-2 in that Al Holbert pit with Unser in the second spot. But still, their lead man, Derek Bell, holds on to first spot as we watch Jim Busby once again in the thick of it,
trying to get around car number 16. Now, that is the car owner, Rob Dyson, at the wheel. Now, Dyson does not have that much cockpit time in a 962 Porsche. He's out there just kind of cooling it around the racetrack, but Busby's having a hard time getting by it. Dyson is a full 2 laps down in the 7th spot.
Well, Rob's a good driver in his own right. By his own admission, though, lets the pros run the car when they're really in the thick of it. But right now, Rob running very well. There's Jim trying to get by him on the outside coming off of turn 1, but can't make it work. Right behind them is the number 44 Jaguar of Bob Julius. He is 1 lap down in the 6th position. So actually Busby is being bracketed by cars that are not actually in contention. But look at old Rob Dyson. He just puts the pedal to the metal up that back straightaway and has given Jim Busby all he wants trying to get by. But there he goes. Like, no! You know, I'm surprised Rob doesn't let him by. He may not know that Busby is in contention for the lead, and of course on the same lap as leader Derek Bell, but there he goes. Rob Dyson probably will let him through. He doesn't, though.
When all of this is allowing Derek Bell to increase his already substantial lead, and I tell you, that's a very frustrated Jim Busby here. Busby just, I'm sure, saying to himself, calm down here. You've got to find the right place to do it. Don't force it.
Well, I would imagine that Rob's being shown the passing flag by the corner workers around the racetrack. Maybe he isn't. Maybe those guys don't know he's not in contention either. But in any case, it is sort of a track etiquette situation that the slower cars do let the leaders through. But Rob Dyson is driving very well no matter what.
And from Busby's standpoint, total frustration, because Derek Bell is not only getting further ahead, but Brian Redmond, who is back in 3rd spot, has unlapped himself and is catching up.
Interesting story with this number 16 car. It's a former Bruce Levin car that Bruce sold to Rob Dyson, and the car is really going quickly. Levin told me he's not going to sell any more cars to anybody that can beat him, so it could be that that's the last sale that Rob Dyson will get from Bruce Levin as we watch the two cars sweep out onto the finishing straight. That is the press building they're going by on the right, and it could be a pass here, Steve.
Yeah, he is fine cleanly. Jim Busby hoping to catch Derek Bell. That may be a fantasy in some ways unless something goes wrong with Bell's car. But Brock, the battle plan with Busby and Jochen Moss was for Moss to drive most of the race, then for Jim to get in, turn the boost all the way up, and just go for it.
Well, that's what he's doing right now as he sweeps up through these very, very tricky S's. You notice they're blind corners and very difficult to get through. Very quick part of this racetrack as we watch that little trio of cars come up the straightaway. Remember, that's where we saw 200-mile-plus qualifying speeds by the David Hobbs Corvette. Probably not quite that fast at this point in the race, but plenty quick indeed. Over 190, you can be sure that Jim Busby was touching as he swept down into that boot. There he goes, down through turn number 6, down that little hill, in behind some of the slower cars. That is GTU leader Jack Baldwin that he swept past there, and down through turn 7, accelerating up toward turn 8. Bunch of cars still in this race. A lot of the slower automobiles, quite reliable, and there is always those automobiles that the leaders have to thread through.
And Busby driving past the slower cars as if they were pylons in a gymkhana.
Absolutely. This is the final left for this man, Derek Bell, in the number 14 Porsche, as you see him sweep up the hill out of turn 7. Notice he's got the headlights on. A lot of the faster cars do that just to give the guys in the lower, smaller, slower classes an opportunity to see them come. The approach speeds are enormous with these fast cars.
Al Holbert waiting to see that car come around. If he sees it, and it appears that he will, it means that his team has swept the International Motorsports Association season 1-2 for Holbert-owned cars.
Just a few corners left for Derek Bell, and he heads for victory. Down the little short chute, heading into turn 11. That's the final corner. We've had some problems here, but not for Derek Bell on this occasion. Underneath the bridge, the start-finish line, and that's the checkered flag. Victory for Derek Bell. A very casual team here in the Lowenbrow pit, Steve. They've seen a lot of victories. I guess it's getting to be old hat for them.
Well, Al Holbert, let's not forget, shares the triumph here with Derek Bell as the two co-drove. Al Unser Jr. did a single in the other car that they had hoped to finish second until they picked up the Mazda muffler. Look at the red light down in the corner of your screen, right lower corner. That is the fuel light. Jim Busby turned the boost up so high, the economy went away. Will he even get to the checkered flag for his second-place finish, Brock?
Well, he better not falter too much, Steve, because right behind him, maybe about 10 seconds back, is Brian Redman in that 04 Jaguar. So Jim Busby has got to limp that Porsche home, and with its motor coughing on its last few drops of fuel, it could get mighty, mighty tense.
And Brock, if we should see that car start to weave back and forth, we know indeed the engine is sputtering. They'll often use that tactic to try to pick up every last drop of fuel out of the tank. So far, though, Busby taking his usual line.
Well, as Brian Redman sweeps off that corner and heads toward the finish line in his own right, he still has some hopes that maybe Busby's going to break, but it won't. There is a checkered flag for Jim. He is across the finish line, but I'll tell you what, he is just about out of fuel.
And that's twice this year that Jim Busby has finished second. He picked up that spot at the Riverside race as well, behind the winner, his own number 68 car. There's third place, Brian Redman and the Hurley Haywood car.
So a pair of Porsches and a Jaguar take the top 3 spots. We'll be back to talk with the winners.
The Serengeti New York 500 is in the record book. And what an interesting race a truly international cast of drivers gave us today. Derek Bell and Al Holbert share the win. Bell finished for the checkered flag, and Brock is with him.
What a terrific effort by Derek Bell as he out of the car, got his helmet off already. He's ready to get out of that thing for sure. Derek, congratulations. I've never seen a man get out so quickly.
Well, I was undressing on the way around.
Any problems at all?
No, I mean, Al did a fantastic job. He just set it up, and all I had to do was have a Sunday afternoon drive.
You didn't drive while Stuck was out there.
No.
You must have been a little antsy watching him run, though, earlier in the going.
Well, I raced with him all year in the World Championships. I know what he's like. I have to keep calming him down, but he's got nobody in that team to calm him down. And I guess probably his exuberance didn't improve the gearbox or whatever went wrong, so... He drove very well.
The racetrack got a little greasy, I would expect, like all these do.
The only thing was I was lapping at the end as quick as anybody, but when I wanted to. But it was greasy, very greasy, yeah.
But a good race, though.
It was in good condition. I think it was a good race. It was a pity it sort of seemed to break up after the big yellow. Before that, I thought it was a great race, and then it just turned into rather a drone, you know. But I didn't want to give up and give the others a chance, so I think I got 50-odd, 60 seconds lead, but only because I got an insurance then if you have to get a change of tire or anything.
Derek, our congratulations on you picking up second spot, which I think was a big effort today, and worked out very well. Didn't have to use the other car.
No, that was nice. No, I mean, it gives me a stronger position in second place, but as you know, I've got to defend the World Championship in Japan next week, which, of course, means that I've got to miss Columbus, which would have been a great classic to race at after Miami. I'd love to have had a go at that one.
We'll see you next year there, I'm sure. Congratulations, Derek.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Now let's go to Steve for the second place finisher.
Thank you, Brock, and congratulations, Jim Busby, and of course to Jochen Mass, your co-driver. A beautifully executed second place finish.
Well, we did our best. I think, you know, Al had us covered most of the afternoon, and Jochen stayed with him in the beginning. I went out and thought we could run right with him, and about the end of my first lap, I put the brakes on going into one. The seat broke off of its forward mounts, and I slid up underneath the dash. And from that point forward, when I'd accelerate, I'd wind up in the back of the car, and when I'd brake, I'd wind up in the front of the car, turn left, I'll almost fall out of the car. So I cinched my belts down as tight as I could, put my knees up against underneath the dash, and drove with my toes for the rest of the race. And it really beat us up pretty good.
I know what you hoped to happen was when you took the wheel that you had enough fuel to really crank up the boost and go after it. But with a broken seat, were you able to do that?
I wasn't able to really do it, although my driving was fairly inconsistent simply because of the seat. And we did, in fact, run out of gas crossing the start-finish line coming across at the end. So I stumbled around on the reserve button and got back. So our calculations were very close. The pace car came out and put us in a position to pit, and we pitted maybe a lap too soon, as it turned out. But fortunately, we made it through. I slowed down a great deal at the end, and the Jag started catching me. But I realized that if I saw him, I could actually probably get a little wider and keep him behind me.
And all very impressive on tires that are really basically street-legal slicks.
Yeah, we're real impressed, and I think that one of the advantages that we might have had here today is we knew pretty much with liners and the way the tire's constructed that we really weren't looking at tire problems. We also were able to run very quick, as you noticed at the beginning of the race before the seat broke. Jochen was able to stay right in the lead. So
what a start he pulled off.
Wonderful start. We call it a Texas start. It's the first time I've ever seen a German do it.
All right, let's go to Brock with the third place finisher.
Well, Brian, I guess it was the usual afternoon of endurance car racing, a greasy racetrack, slow cars, debris, and the normal hazards, but you prevailed, third place against the turbo cars. Can't feel too bad.
No, I think we're really delighted. The XJR5 Jaguar went perfectly. I mean, we never missed a beat. We could not have done any better in our team's performance. It was very satisfactory. I think when we get our new car next year and when there are some minor restrictions placed on the turbos, we'll be in very good shape. The car was superb. It never missed a beat. It was just terrific. An ideal race, and you can't say that very often. The traffic around here in the first hour was just unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Cars that were going 50 miles an hour slower, side by side on the straight, so you couldn't get past them, and just a nightmare, really. But a great day for us. I mean, just a super result.
Gar, congratulations and excellent work.
Thank you very much.
Some fine gentlemen share the victory stand here today. A tip of the hat also to Jack Baldwin, who won the race and the series in GTU. And how about this lady? From Florida, Lynn St. James. She won at Road America co-driving. She drove the whole 500 miles herself today in the Roush Mustang. For Ed Bruce and Brock Yates, I'm Steve Evans saying so long from beautiful Watkins, Glen, New York.
The executive producer of Diamond P Sports is Harvey M. Pallage. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. American Sports Cavalcade has been brought to you by V.F. Goodrich, makers of high-performance TA radials. We make cars perform. And by Ford and your Ford dealers. Have you driven a Ford lately?